The following podcast is an RMG Media production.
It's time we go beyond the handshake. It's time we deepen business relationships and take it to the next level of cultivating and building relationships past that business card exchange and beyond the initial handshake. Welcome to Beyond the Handshake, where we will take a deep dive into getting to know businesses and business owners, why they do what they do in business, what drives them to success, why they work so hard, what they struggle with, what they succeed in, and tips they have for other businesses to learn from their experiences. I am Lucy Miller, founder and CEO of Women Connect. Let's go beyond the handshake. Today's episode is with Jamie Hurd, the co-founder and executive director of Faithfully Restored, which is a nonprofit that serves women who are walking through difficult situations. After experiencing the loss of her son, William, in December of 2015, God surrounded her family with a community of people who served as his hands and feet. She saw the goodness of God and his faithfulness in the midst of heartache and devastating loss. Because of this, Jamie has made it her life's mission to help women going through hard times. Her goal is to let women know that regardless of their current situation, they are not alone, and there is hope found in Jesus. Jamie and her husband, Daniel, live in Brentwood, Tennessee, with their two girls, Madeline and Annie. Today's episode is so impactful. We talk about how faith drove her to create her nonprofit and the lessons she has learned all the way, and following the Lord's calling in all that you do. Let's get started. All right. I am so excited to have Jamie Hurd on today. Thank you for being here, Jamie.
Thanks for having me. I'm really excited.
Yeah, we've been friends for a while and love supporting your ministry and nonprofit. So just excited to learn about that today. But let's talk about you starting a nonprofit from the ground up. Mm-hmm. You were a teacher and now you're the executive director of Faithfully Restored Women. So let's talk about that journey, and we'll get into the hard and good about it too.
Mm-hmm, definitely. Well, my last job was teaching at Ensworth for 10 years. It was my dream job. I loved it. I went to college knowing that I was going to be a teacher. And then it was around spring of that year that I remember sitting in a meeting about a spelling curriculum coming out, which normally would like jazz me up. And I love stuff like that. And I remember sitting there thinking, I don't really care about what's happening here. And I remember feeling this, I don't really know if this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And we had lost our 2.5-year-old son, William, back in 2015. And I went back to work after that. And in those couple years, I really became aware of women hurting. I just kind of became a magnet for stories of child loss, and close friends had experienced. We had walked through infertility with Jamie Hamilton and later adoption. And then in that same year that we lost William, our friend Heather had been diagnosed with early breast cancer. She had just turned 30. And so we had walked through that, and we all just became these magnets for these stories and felt a weight of hearing about all these women suffering. And so I think that was part of it too, is my perspective shifted. And the three of us go to fellowship, and we were walking through James, and it was an Act of Faith series. And I remember sitting there week after week and feeling like, okay, we've asked each other to pray for different people that we hear about, but we can really do something. And so when we walked through that, our friends wrote us notes, sent us care packages, and we had such community that reminded us we weren't alone. And so through that spring, I'd finished teaching, and really that summer wrestled with going back to work. And I'd talked to my husband, Daniel, and I was like, Daniel, I don't think I'm meant to go back. And he's like, okay, you need a job. And I was like, do I really? Do I? I don't know. And he's like, you need a job. And which I've always worked. I love working. And so I said, I just want to get Faithfully Restored off the ground and promote organ donation. And so at that point, we had started meeting, the three of us. And 6 months after William had passed away, I came in contact with Jenny Rebecca Springer. We had mutual friends and found out she had lost her 8-year-old son, Hayes. And so we became friends. And so we had started meeting, and we're like, we're going to meet once a month and write notes and send care packages to women that we hear about that are suffering. And so it really was that transition of truly feeling like, I think I'm meant to leave this job. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's next. Now, now it so clearly looks like I stepped into executive director role of a nonprofit, but that was not the case.
Right.
We had
That's
not.
the fast forward version.
That's the fast forward version. There was we didn't have any money. We were sending things with our own money. There was it wasn't developed at all. But we had the idea. We had Googled how to start a nonprofit. We kind of went through.
Ask you about that later.
Someone said recently, they're like, what attorney helped you with your nonprofit? And I was like, oh, you don't need an attorney. Well, now I know you probably should have an attorney, but we didn't. And so it was just really early stages. And so
you were just helping people. You were just following your heart and helping.
Exactly. And then it was a week before school started. I'd already received my class list. And I went into our headmaster and was like, I know I'm not meant to come back. And he was so great. They had been so supportive through us having kids, us losing a child, having another one. And so I remember leaving that meeting and I put my hand on the door and I had cried like 3 different times throughout that meeting. And he was like, Jamie, and I look back and he's like, you did it. He's like, and it's going to be okay. And I think I needed to hear that confirmation from a place that I had been for 10 years. And that was really, I was like, okay, you're right. They're going to be okay. I think sometimes we feel so tied to our job that we've had for a while when really, and I'll tell you, a week before I did that, I was at gymnastics with Annie and I mentioned to someone, I think the gymnastics teacher, she was young, and I said, I think I'm going to leave my job. And she was like, Jamie, you never know who's praying for that job. And I was like, wow. And I actually did know because another coworker had left earlier and they didn't hire the person that we wanted. And so I knew exactly who was praying for that job. And so it was such freedom. I feel like the Lord gave me those little gifts along the way. So it made it a little easier. But Daniel and I were not really on the same page, which made it harder for those couple months. And but yeah, ended up, I knew what the Lord was calling me to do. It was just scary. And there was no clear vision of what was next. I took a job at a preschool at my church, paid nothing. And 2 days a week, 9 to 2. But I did
I got the job.
I did. I
Daniel
checked. I got the job. And which was really sweet is William was there when he was 2. He had started there when he was 2. And so he was just there for those couple months before December. And then Annie, our third, who we had after William passed away, was there in the 2-year-old class. So I got to be there with her. So Lord was so
that was
kind in those.
Yeah.
I know, in those gifts that sometimes we want to know what it's going to be like in those next steps before we leave. And I'm just grateful that I finally did decide, okay, Lord, I don't know what's next, but I'm going to trust you with it.
I love that. I didn't think I would start like tearing up like 3 minutes into our talk. We haven't even talked about hard stuff.
People come to the office and they're like, I don't know why I'm crying. I was like, I could have told you we're going to cry. I don't know what it is, but yeah.
Well, so did you ever envision that Faithfully Restored would grow this big? I mean, because you help women all across the country now. And in really more ways than just the praying and giving.
Yeah, it really, we didn't even really think long term. When we started meeting at my house once a month, Jenny, Rebecca, Jamie, Heather, and I, it was like out of a need for there are women out there that don't have the community that we have. And we know what a note means. We know what it feels like when you're in that deep valley of cancer diagnosis or of losing a child. We know what it feels like to have people actually praying for you. And so it's more out of this need. There's women around us that are hurting and we feel like we need to do something. And so it wasn't this strategic plan of, okay, this is our 3 years that we're going to do this, and then we're going to get to this. And so I didn't really spend much time thinking about what it would look like in 5 years. And people had asked me, I remember specifically sitting with someone at lunch and they were like, where do you see Faithfully Restored in 5 years, when we were just getting going? And it was like, I want to be doing the exact same thing, just with more women. And that's really what has happened is we take in prayer requests from across the country, which always we have served women across the country.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, we were looking at a list recently of packages going out for people that will experience their first holiday without a child, a spouse, or their parent. And the majority of them are outside of the state of Tennessee.
Wow.
So, which was kind of
How
shocking.
did they find out about?
Word of mouth we'll go around as founders and speak and do different events. So it just kind of depends. But that was kind of shocking that list, the majority was outside the state. But that's been a goal from the beginning. And so we'll take in those prayer requests and truly try to meet whatever need that is. Now, everyone gets a care package from us. Now they're all made by volunteers, which is really cool from the beginning, it was the four of us putting together these random packages. We had no money. So Heather was so good at reaching out to companies and getting free stuff. And sometimes, we look back and laugh of the random stuff that was probably excess of that companies that they wanted to get rid of, that then we're like, yes, we'll do this. We'll send this random thing. But we've always just wanted people to feel whatever they're walking through, that they were loved, not alone, and there's hope in Jesus. And so it's been really cool to experience growth, but keep that mission and just do it on a bigger scale. And so that's really kind of been our guiding plan. Now next year we'll actually do a strategic plan, and now we have to do all those things that bigger nonprofits do.
Yes.
But when we
Grown
started,
so
yes. But when we started, that's really what we wanted to do. And so and we'll talk about later kind of some pain points and stuff, but it's keeping that mission, but now figuring out how do we have that same intentionality and care with the number of women we're supporting. It looks different when you're supporting 100 women a year to now supporting 800 women a year with different stories. So but yeah, we didn't really spend much time thinking about what it would look like. We we clearly knew what the Lord was calling us to do and just said yes to it.
You just trusted.
Yeah.
Well, so for someone that may be listening to this in another state or even here locally, how can someone support your mission from afar and then here locally? What are different ways? What does that look like?
Absolutely. It's been nice. Since day one, we have wanted a way for women to get involved. And we know what the Lord's done, the four of us, from starting this, in the healing that He's done whenever you serve, whenever you volunteer, whenever you put yourself just kind of outside of yourself and serve, there's just a different perspective that you have. And so we've always wanted a way for women to volunteer. And so locally, you can come in our office, you can volunteer. Like I said, every care package a volunteer is making. So you can come in and you might get a piece of paper that says Jamie, loss of child, Heather, cancer diagnosis, and you are curating. We almost have a little store set up, and you're curating that care package of thinking, what if I was sitting in this situation that this woman is walking through? What would be beneficial? What would make me feel comforted, make me feel seen? And then everything has a handwritten note that leaves our office. So they're writing those handwritten notes. We have tons of examples. So people come in and I don't know what to say to someone. And we have tons of examples.
That's great.
And then everything is prayed over. And so that's a way locally that you can sign up to volunteer on our website, faithfullyrestoredwomen.com. You'll sign up and then get a sign up genius once a month. That's an opportunity to volunteer. We also host a ton of fun events. You can sign up to volunteer with events. We also just have note writing. Someone told me the other day, I'll do anything but note writing because their handwriting's terrible.
I would put myself in that category.
That would not be you then. But we'll have note writing to where you can even, maybe you don't have the time. And so you can come in, grab a pack of 20 note cards, and maybe you're writing to all oncology patients. So there'll be a sample card, and then you're writing and praying for these oncology patients, and then dropping the cards back up at our office, and then we'll take those in our oncology packages. So we really try. One of our staff members was saying the other day to someone that walked in our office, she said, my favorite thing is trying to figure out what are the gifts that the Lord's given you you might have more time on your hands now and you might want to come in and volunteer. You might be a stay-at-home mom and you always have your kids, but you just need something for yourself. Like, so taking those note homes when they're down for a nap or something like that, a way that you can serve without having the time to yourself.
Yeah.
And then financially, we have 63 monthly donors from across the country. You are one of them, little Hope Builder.
Hope Builder.
Yes. And that brings in over $100,000 a year.
Okay.
And I always tell people that's one of my favorite ways to stay engaged, because a one-time gift is fine, but we have Morgan on our staff that is dedicated to those Hope Builders. So she's checking in on them. She's sending emails. She's sending little gifts. She's sending just things to let them know that they're appreciated. So being locally, that's great. But then across the country, it's just kind of a way to stay engaged.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then financially to partner with us, some people, like our biggest donors, would say what an answered prayer we are to them. And of course, I would say what an answered prayer they are to us. But some people have the finances, and as believers, we're called to give. And so we just want to be a place where they feel good about giving their money. And so truly, I love to meet people in the office and talk to them if they are local. But we really try to figure out what way interacting with Faithfully Restored, whether it's serving, whether financially giving, and then also wherever they are, let us love your people. Like if you have a neighbor that just lost their spouse, or your aunt is diagnosed with breast cancer, fill out a prayer request.
Yeah.
You can go on our website, and that is a way to be connected to our mission. And then you get to see from that friend and us serving them what it looks like to truly be cared for in that way. And so even some people that come in the office, it's like, right now, we just need to care for you. Like in this season, we need to care for you. And so that's a great way to get involved. And you just put your information, their information, super easy. It's a form on our website, and then a little bit about their situation. And then we kind of determine, what type of care that we'll give to them. But that's another way to get involved is let us love your people.
Y'all do such an amazing job. I know my family's personally been the recipient of that. I know my granddaddy died a few years ago, and you all have loved on my mom like so consistently in an amazing way. She'd call me and be like, this just showed up on my doorstep, and like, oh my goodness, like just it has been so touching for her in her season of grief.
That's one of our things, is to try to not be a one and done.
Right.
And so especially with loss, 2 of the founders have lost children. And so we know what that feels like, that continued care. We had that. We have people in our own life still. It'll be 9 years in December, and that we lost William. And we still have people checking in on us. I still get texts. I still get people that are hanging his ornament that say that they're thinking of me. And it means a lot. And so we want to continue loving on people. And so with loss, we have that process. It's a little easier with loss because there's dates. And so this holiday season, we sent out 275 care packages for first loss. Wow. So that's anyone in our system that this was their first set of holidays without a child, without their spouse, without a parent. And so that would have been a package that your mom got. Also then before her first Father's Day, she got something.
Yeah.
And that's anticipating that first Father's Day. We do the same thing with Mother's Day. And we always send them a couple weeks before as they're anticipating, because that person, I know, that date's coming. And just to see them and say, we know this Father's Day looks different as you're grieving.
Yeah.
Like, we're here with you. You're being prayed for. And the feedback we hear of having strangers remember, like someone told me the other day, like you expect your close friends and your family to show up, but to have strangers showing up in that way is just really powerful.
Definitely.
And then our anniversary care packages go out. And so we lost William in December. So I'm on the November list. So this past November got mine. And it's just a little care package, has a note that says, we're still praying for you as you anticipate that anniversary. And it's really powerful. So for loss of child, we continue to do that. We've been in existence 5 years. Every year they've gotten it. As we've grown, we've kind of had to think we can't sustain every prayer request that comes in, loss of spouse, loss of parent, we serve some like loss of relative or friend.
A lot.
You know, it just adds up because those lists are compiling every year. So what we decided as founders is to serve those women for 2 years. So they'll get 2 anniversary packages. So as they enter that 3rd year and with spouse or with parent. And so even to be seen 2 years later is
huge.
Powerful.
Yeah.
And so, so it's figuring out those unique ways to see women. And we know that because of our stories and what we've walked through.
I was going to say, like, there's so many people that start nonprofits for various reasons, but you all have deep connections to the reason why. And out of grief and out of sadness, you're doing so many amazing things. So, like, how does that propel you forward? I know you feel like this is your calling, but I'm sure that helps with the hard stuff.
Absolutely. It really does. Even just growing, this truly came in such an organic way through our pain. And so we know what it feels like when people cared for us. And so to be able to care for so many women on this large of scale, like with so many care packages going out. And I know, like, we lost William in December. And so January, I went to Daniel, and we had a 4-year-old daughter at the time too. And I was like, I'm just really struggling. Like, I was so glad to have a 4-year-old daughter at the time, but it was, I'll tell you, parenting and that deep grief.
Can't even imagine.
She came up to my bedside one time and was like, Mom, she was like, at least I didn't die. And I was like, okay. I was like, I need to get it together. Like, I'm not functioning well. And I had the support, and I went to Daniel and I was like, I've got to get out of here. And not everyone has those resources to just I wrote a friend and I said, where do I need to go? And so I went to this very nice, amazing place in Arizona, spa type retreat center. And it was when I got there, I just exhaled for the first time in a month. No one knew me there. No one knew what I was walking through. No one looked at me like, gosh, I can't believe she's out of the grocery store, or should I talk to her? Should I not? I don't know what to say to her. So I'm just going to like act like I didn't see her. And
goodness.
It's just, it was the first time that I could exhale and just take a breath. And I think part of it is I needed, and I still need these times where I'm not caring for anyone else. Like, I'm not worried about cooking dinner. I'm not worried about picking up someone from
what's going
daycare.
in the backpack.
Yes, what's going on. Because when you have those things, grieving is really hard, because that grief can come and then you're like, I got too many other things going on to do. And so flew out there, went away for a couple days, cried on the way back on my flight. I did not want to come home. I was like, wanted to stay out there.
I bet.
But it really allowed me such healing and able to move forward. And so to be able to offer that to women, we've sent a ton of grieving moms on trips. Just recently, last weekend, we sent a mom and husband. They had a stillbirth and they have little kids at home, and we're just really grieving. And we're like, what does caring for you look like? And offered her to go. And she found this little place. They had, I think maybe they got engaged there or something, but this little place in Vermont. So they just went for the weekend. And I know that strengthened their marriage. I know that allowed them time away, not caring for anyone else and just focusing on them. And so fueling our mission from our pain is, for me, it looks like caring for grieving moms. And then for Heather, I know the way we're able to care for oncology patients and do different things. We partner with Waves of Grace every year and send cancer patients, their entire family, to the beach free of charge. And she was able to do that through Waves of Grace. So it really, the way we were cared for and loved, and to be able to provide what these women need, I don't have to imagine what that might feel like. I was there, and Heather was there, and Jamie knows what a baby gift in the waiting of adoption means. Whereas I would think that's kind of weird to send someone in the waiting of adoption until I walked through that with her. And she was like, someone, if you were pregnant, people would be celebrating you.
Right.
You'd be having the baby shower. People are so scared of failed adoptions and different things. Like, these moms would be moms yesterday if they could.
Yeah.
So they're
just
love
waiting.
on them. They're just waiting. And so it's really out of those personal stories that then we're able to provide such unique care. And definitely taking, our founders have not been through every situation, but now it's with the Faithfully Restored community, we're able to have those people that have walked through different experiences pour into that and what might be helpful. So it is still very personal and tied to our stories. And honestly, it's so rewarding as founders to see the growth, to see when we started, it was like, if we could just help one other person, we know if that one other person was us, it made a world of difference, literally generational impact. Because as I was cared for as a mom, as a wife, my kids, we just had someone come and kind of give their impact story testimonial to our board. And she experienced a really traumatic miscarriage in the car with her 6-year-old daughter. And she said, you didn't just care for me. She said, when I received that care package, it had a devotion in it that I was able to sit and read with my child. She said, I had the hardest time with my faith at that time, being in such a dark place. And I didn't want to read scripture. I knew I needed to, but I didn't want to. And so that book that I was able to read with my daughter, just really, you didn't care for me, you cared for my daughter. And then her daughter later, they were praying about a little boy at school that was going through some things. And she's like, remember when those strangers sent you that package and we're praying for you? Like, let's pray for my friend at school.
Well, that's amazing.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, she's shared with our board and we were all like bawling. And so things like that, you don't, as an organization, we don't plan for that. I mean, the Lord's been so kind in all the details. I'm constantly reminding our team, like, he has the details. He has the perfect timing. I mean, when we started this, we didn't have an office or anything. The stuff was at Jenny Rebecca's house. We had a Gmail that we were getting prayer requests through the Gmail.
Yeah.
I was then going to Jenny Rebecca's house, making a little care package. I was writing a note. It'd sit in my car for 2 weeks.
And then you'd make it to the post office.
I'd finally go to the post office. And then I'd hear back that woman got it when they got back from this fertility treatment office. So early on, I was able to be like, Lord, you truly do have this. And I think he had to show up in such big, obvious ways because I would have questioned it and I would have tried to have such control. But from the beginning, he's been like, I've got you. Just do the next thing. I've got you. And I think that's really helped even growing it financially. Just his provision from the very beginning.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a quick story. You've probably heard this before, but at our launch event in August of 2019, were you there at Fellowship? It was our first.
No,
okay.
I was not.
Okay. It was our very first launch event and probably 150 women. We just kind of shared our hopes and dreams about Faithfully Restored. And I had just left my job a couple weeks earlier and I had said that on stage. I just left my job and here we are. And someone that was in the audience, a friend had invited them. They didn't know any of us. And she called me later. We had them fill out donation cards. And she called me later and wanted to do an end of the year donation. To be honest, I didn't even know that was a thing. I was like,
great.
Whenever you get around to it, it's fine with me.
She's like, no, I need to have it postmarked by.
Right. I'm like, okay. And which looking back, I'm like, that's hilarious. Now we have a whole campaign on end of year.
Learned.
Yes. Oh, there's a lot to now end of year. But she called, had a few questions. So I just kind of went over some details. And so they sent us $10,000 through PayPal. I mean, we are hitting, our phones are going off about someone donated. We're all calling each other like, who is this person that donated this money? Like, what is going on?
Is this real?
Is this real? We had been using our own money. And so, and so then we were like, she needs to be on our board. Like, this person is that invested. Like, you need to get on in here. And so we were forming our board. And so I remember it was in December of 2019 and we met her for coffee and we sit down and she said, my husband and I feel called to pay your salary and for you to be employed by Faithfully Restored.
I don't think I've heard this story.
Really?
No. What?
And I was like, what? I mean, we all sat there like, I mean, I wasn't even praying bold enough prayers. So when I say like the Lord showed up in ways that it was like, and I think he had to, I think, you just fight against that fear and doubt of, you just left like really my dream job and you think you're going to step into something and get this off the ground. What does that look like? And we had zero experience. All 4 founders had no experience with nonprofits. And so I always tell people, when you feel that feeling of the Lord calling you to something, just kind of lean in, because the second that we totally surrendered and we're like, admitted we don't know what we're doing, but we know this is the next step, he really just provided in such incredible ways. And so that's really how, without that couple early investment in us, we wouldn't be where we are today, because they truly believed in us in a way that propelled us forward. And, staffing is huge. You can, you can have all the dreams and goals that you want, but if you don't have the people to execute them, you don't go anywhere.
That's
and
right.
so that made it early on I came on staff. I was 15 hours a week. Heather was 10. And I think they would have paid for me to come on 40 hours a week, but it was such this, I don't know what this looks like.
I'll start here.
I'll start here situation. And so that really propelled us forward and gave us the tools we needed early on and the time dedicated to getting it off, to truly working. I was losing money working because we had Annie, like I had to pay for childcare for Annie when I was working. So it really, having people believe in us early on was a pivotal moment to us succeeding and growing. So,
well, I mean, and that's so true for even for-profit businesses, like someone else believing in you can give you that confidence that you didn't even know that you needed and that what you do need. So.
Absolutely.
So from a nonprofit creation perspective, you didn't have any experience. What all are some things that you've learned, like logistically or like systems-wide, or how do you do that? Because I know that there are probably going to be people listening that, have great jobs or own great businesses, but have this idea for a nonprofit.
Right.
So.
Yeah, definitely. We've learned a lot along the way. We have a team of 6 people now, still part-time, most 30 hours a week. Most of our team's 20 hours a week. And I would say, when you start a nonprofit, nonprofits start different ways. I guess for us, we didn't have much money when we started. And so it was this, you kind of did things that you had the money for. And I think for us early on, we invested in some systems that really helped. So we did Outlook early on. I actually had someone call us and we got a grant for all Microsoft Outlook products, all Microsoft products. It was crazy, like a friend of a friend. And to this day, we have never paid for any Microsoft. Like we all have Office, we all have Outlook and everything. Great. And so that was a huge gift early on because we were trying to make do with this Gmail account. And then we all had different things, like just those simple things that then now 5 years later, it's like, well, of course you have those things when you have a nonprofit, but early on, the sooner you can take steps. So like our donor database system, early on, we invested in that. And so that was really good for growing our donor base, having someone come in. And my mom has always done our finances.
Okay.
She volunteered for 4 years, but now she's getting paid, which is really nice.
Oh,
and
sweet.
Really great. And of course, she's like a hope builder and donates and stuff too. But that also helped early on to have someone knowledgeable of finance and but investing in those things that just make things easier. So having Outlook and having all the Microsoft products really helped with our list and different things. Having Kindful as a donor database early on. We use that database for anyone we serve even.
Okay.
So we use it different than most nonprofits. So our donors are in there, anyone we serve, everything is tracked within that one system.
That's awesome. I think that's like, when I even think about my own business from starting to where we are now, there's so much that like along the way, we need to pivot and add more systems and processes to make it work better. Sometimes it's harder later on because you've got more going into it than if you had started that from the beginning, like putting a CRM in place or just different things like that. So that's great that you all had that. Because I mean, your donor base has probably grown significantly.
Definitely.
So
yeah. And it's just easier to track. I mean, I could pull up right now how many people walking through a divorce we've served or anything like that. I could pull up a profile and we track anything we've ever sent them so that they're not receiving like a duplicate from us. Someone's not getting like a Jesus calling twice or something like that. Where if you were doing that in a Google Doc, you couldn't do that. And so
it'd be like a spreadsheet chaos.
Right. Yes. Yeah. And so early on, investing in those systems that make your mission easier are
I love that.
more beneficial.
So Kindful is the name.
Yes. Well, we've actually switched.
Okay.
Bloomerang bought Kindful.
Okay.
But same type of thing. We actually just switched this summer. But
so what's outside of that? Can you think of a process maybe you all have put in place? Because I know you now have more team members than you used to for making things run smoother. So volunteers / teammates.
We use Monday.com, which is a kind of program or like event programming data. I don't know. What do you call it? Do you know what Monday.com is?
Well,
like
I'm trying to think what it is. Is it a communication tool like Slack?
Yes. No, it has different boards, like a project management.
Okay.
Yes, that's what it is. Project management.
Okay.
So we started that 2 years ago. And actually, I mean, for anyone out there with a nonprofit, a lot of these companies will do a nonprofit discount. And so Monday, actually, you have 10 licenses for free. So we don't pay anything for it.
Oh, wonderful. Okay.
And I would say that has been really good because especially with a small team early on, I think our problem was people were texting different things, you were emailing different things, and that gets to be a lot. And so Monday.com for us has really us communicating through that and trying not to have work stuff on a text message or even emails. Monday.com has allowed us to task someone something, the status of it. You can even do automations to where for example, a breakfast club that we do, that event has a bunch of different tasks. So like when Jen books the speaker, it will then send an email to Heather that notifies her that she needs to send them the, speaker form or something like that.
Yeah.
So that one has really helped us as well.
So what have been the hard things about your nonprofit and what all you all do to serve women?
I think there's a piece of heaviness that comes with the nature of what we do. When we started, I was the one that was receiving all those prayer requests for the first couple of years. And I remember sitting at the table one time with Daniel and I was like, this is too much. I can't handle this. It's
handling
just
everybody else's.
Yeah, it's
sadness.
Just terrible situation after terrible situation. And that stuff is going on, but to have it kind of in your face like that, and then those emails are coming in and you're not only being made aware of them, but then you're responding to 80% of the time it's from a friend. So it'd be like you submitting a prayer request for your mom that she lost her dad. And so I'm actually communicating with you and not necessarily 80% of the time and not that person. Now we love when people submit prayer requests for themselves. And then we truly can do more intentional care when we're dealing with that person and what they need. But so it's a lot having all of those situations just kind of in your face. So then it was helpful for me when we had Courtney come in that role. She did that for 3 years and then had to switch because really having someone in that role of responding to all those prayer requests is just a lot. So I think there's a heaviness with our staff. We have a budget for mental health that they get to, have X amount to go do whatever they want. Some people do facials, some people do massages, some people do counseling, whatever. Because, when we sit at a team meeting and now I don't see every prayer request that comes in. So that's very helpful. But when we're sitting in a team meeting and our outreach coordinator is saying some different situations that are going on, it's hard. I mean, it's a lot. There's really a heaviness with it. So I think that's hard. figuring out how to care for our staff in a way that even though we're hearing these heavy situations, there is hope and joy in getting to serve them, like getting to send a couple away, I mean, it's just, there's a lot of joy there because it's so meaningful and life-changing to that person. And so getting to hear back, we get a lot of feedback. People will send thank you notes or different things. And so it is encouraging, but trying to figure out how to care for our staff in a way that they're really good at their job, but just the nature of us hearing about really hard situations and walking with women through it. And so that's been something that, I always am going to our board with wanting to do more for our staff in terms of self-care, in terms of different things to kind of help that. I would say also, I didn't have experience with the staff. I mean, I was a teacher. And so I think for me, the learning curve of not only running a nonprofit, but then being in charge of people is a lot. And so that's taken some time. I have a great board that, helps me with that. But I think just me personally, I have zero experience. And so.
Yeah. So how did you learn how to start up? You've got your board. How do you do that?
We really.
Google video or?
No, someone told us surround yourself with people that know what they're doing. And so we brought people on our board that were super knowledgeable in nonprofits, had served on a lot of different boards because the four of us are on the board. None of us had been on a board. Jamie Hamilton's board president, she did watch before our first board meeting. She watched a YouTube video of like how to run a board meeting. I remember our children's minister at the time was on our board when we first started. And we went through our first board meeting. And granted, he has probably sat on like 30 boards, and it's all of our first board meeting, the four founders. And then we have my mom there. And then we have, at the beginning, it's like people that love you and just like want to support you. But we tried to put people on our board that knew what they were doing. And so we get done with this board meeting and Marty is his name. And he was like, wow. He's like, this was the wild, wild west. And I was like, I don't really think that's a compliment. I don't know.
We got to start somewhere.
But we do have to start somewhere. And I would say another kind of advice is you want people around you that are going to show you grace, that just truly love you, love your mission, are going to speak truth, are going to help you, and then give you grace for, mistakes that you made and stuff. And so that was good really early on to surround ourselves with a board that knew what they were doing. So I think for me, there's been a lot of learning in running a nonprofit and then leading people. And then just kind of those pain points of growth, of figuring out what it looks like. Now, those systems help, but what it looks like taking in, 30 prayer requests a month and doing that same care for those 30 women and the continued care for those 30 women. To now we're almost 100 prayer requests a month and doing that same level of care for those 100 women and continuing to care for those 100 women.
Right.
So that's been hard. How
do you do that?
We add staff.
More staff,
more volunteers. Time. It just takes more time, more money, more resources, which I think for me, in 2019, we ended the year with $28,000, 10 from one person. And this 2024, our budget was $800,000. So you go from $28,000 to $800,000. Fundraising was also something I'd never done, had zero experience in fundraising.
And I think you're amazing at fundraising.
Oh, thank you. Well,
I mean, but I do feel, I want to point out, I know you know this, you've already said it, but along the way, I mean, God has just really continued to provide the right people and resources and opportunities. And, I talk a lot with our guests on here about the business friendships, but then also, just the support in that friendships that you have.
That was one thing I was going to say in just your business relationships. It's the same nonprofit of fundraising. It's all relational. It is, which takes time, the follow-up of it all, but it really has the connections that we've been able to make and the money that's come in. It's been amazing. And so that's there's been a learning curve on that of what that looks like. And early on, I was connected with Mission Increase. And they are a nonprofit that helps Christian nonprofits fundraise, which like, who knew there was a nonprofit that helps Christian nonprofits fundraise? So even figuring out early on what resources are out there, there's tons of resources out there. Again, I found myself, I'm like, oh, well, that's great. They have a webinar, or they have a meeting that takes time to go to. And then it's like, well, these are all great ideas, but then we have to implement these ideas. And I'm working 15 hours a week and trying to get the care packages out, let alone like building a business. You know, there's all the, nonprofit, it's like mission driven, but then a business, there's the actual like product or whatever you're doing. And then there's an element of building your business or building your nonprofit or fundraising. You know, it all takes time. But they early on, I feel like they shaped my view of fundraising in a way of, and that's what they say, like as believers, we are called to give, and you want to be a place that people feel good giving to. And so I've never felt like I've had to beg someone for money or like go out and they're like, will you do this? I don't know. It's really presenting of like, I'd love for you to partner with us in this. And if it's not something you want to partner, like that's okay too. Like at our end goal is like bringing people closer to Christ and having a kingdom impact. I want that to be true for our donors. I want that to be true for the women we serve. And so I've been in situations where we were presenting to a donor and she said, we had told our stories and everything. And she said, I'm going to be honest, last night when I was talking to my husband, we had looked at your website and she said, it just seemed kind of fluffy. And I was sitting there like, oh my goodness, I have never heard someone call our mission fluffy, but okay. And so we just kind of sat there and she came around and she's like, but now after hearing your stories and what you do, she's like, there's actually, because she's like, my husband and I were like, well, what are they doing though? How are they like bringing these women out? Like, what are they doing to take these women out and of their pain and suffering? And she's like, and I've realized like, there is nothing you can do. Like you can walk beside them, but when someone loses their spouse, like you can't fix that. There's nothing you can do, but you can go with them in the trenches and keep reminding them they're not alone and be with them. And so she came around and she's a donor and it's all great. But honestly, I use that as an example because if she were to stay at the fluffy and kind of thought it was fluffy, like she may need to support something that like builds wells in Africa and like for X amount of dollars, she gets so many wells. And that's perfectly fine, So I think having that mindset from the beginning has allowed me, and I mean, I'm able to have that because the Lord's provided in such a way of every year we've brought in more money than we've needed. Yeah. I probably would have a harder time sitting here saying this if like...
Well, but you would have the faith.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think you would be fine.
I don't know. Yeah, it's easier to say that having... And that's been challenging. I mean, you talk about the challenging. I think in my faith, in 2023, in November, early November, we were $200,000 short of our goal. And I was like, oh gosh, this is like not going to be good. And our board was like, we were presenting the budget for 2024 and they're like, we're not even going to hit this goal. Like, I don't think you can go up this much. And I was so deflated and like, okay. And it really kind of rocked me and challenged me. And I thought, you're right. And the enemy loved for me to feel that of like, yeah, like how do you think you can do this?
Who do you think you are?
Yeah. And so really kind of planting those seeds of doubt. And in December, I still struggle around William's anniversary. And I literally had to be taken out in grief and like brought to my knees, so much so that I let go of work because I was struggling myself in grief. And that's what needed to happen for me to realize. And then end of the year, we were over $20,000. We not only met our goal, we were over $20,000.
Wow.
But and then I had to, it's not about me. Like, none of this is about me. I don't really have to do anything per se. Like, this is not. And so it was such a growing experience for me. Truly, I had to be taken out from I was just like mentally not stable in such grief that I'm like, I can't handle work right now. I need to focus. I need to focus on myself. And the money came in. And so it was just like the Lord showing me, when you give your business to him, when you give your nonprofit to him, like he is going to do what he wants with it. And it's not about you. When you stay spirit-led with it, when you're trying to, make a kingdom impact, I want his will ultimately. And I pray that for his will to be done with Faithfully Restored. So it's not about me. And so that was a growing experience in 2023 to realize he is faithful. He called us to this. And when you start it like that, when you truly are like, Lord, are you calling me to start this business? Are you calling me to take this leap of faith? And when you're kind of walking with him in that and leaning on him so heavily, like he is going to provide.
Mm-hmm. What a great message. Yeah. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So lastly, what's next? What's going on in 2025 for Faithfully Restored?
Mm-hmm. We are launching this year. We did breakfast clubs, which you've been to several. Yeah. It got harder they're Thursday at 10 a.m. So I remember when I was teaching and people would say stuff about an event during the day. I'm like, well, that's nice for people that aren't doing anything during the day at 10 a.m. I will never be able to attend one of those. And so we thought, let's do something different. And so we are doing Sunday supper clubs with Faithfully Restored. Mm-hmm. So once a month, it'll be in someone's home and Sunday night. So working women can come and it'll be an intimate max of 30 people. We've thought of some really great topics. Postpartum was one of them that we put out there to have women that have walked through that, have struggled with that. I think when I had kids, I didn't struggle with that and I feel like social media wasn't as present. But I feel like now there's a lot of you only see the good. And so these women that are struggling with postpartum are watching their friends with these
perfect little baby situations.
Yeah. And so, just to kind of shed light on that, another topic that came up was parenting adult children. Mm-hmm. So we serve women all ages. And so that doesn't really apply to us, but for our parents' ages to get together. And what does that look like parenting adult children?
Yeah.
Fun topics that we have coming up, just more ways to bring women together. Mm-hmm. And then we have some fun. We always have a spring fundraiser, fall fundraiser. We have some fun ideas for those. And great. We're constantly adding more volunteer opportunities. So if someone wants to come in the office, volunteer.
Check out the website for that.
So everything, faithfullyrestoredwomen.com is the best way to get plugged in to all of our events on socials. Heather does an amazing job with all of our communications and socials. So way to keep up with us.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I absolutely love what you're doing. I love being able to attend things and learn about and, find ways to plug in myself and serve. And I love being a hope builder. So if you're looking for a way to give, that's a great way to help an amazing organization. So thank you for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.